All right, why don't we get started, Lance?
All right. Today we're going to be talking about navigating new construction STRs. My name is Lance Hamilton. I'm with Savvy STR Agents. Clarke Teft as well. We are with the Powerhouse Group here in the Smokies. So we represent this area. Um, 5 agents on our team. And today, well, honestly, we're just going to talk new construction, the good, the bad, the ugly, the things to watch out for. A lot of this is stuff that Clarke and I have personally experienced. This isn't something we, found on the internet or heard about. So a lot of this is us boots on the ground, helping our clients navigate new construction, buying new construction, doing builds, all that stuff that we've learned kind of along the way. Some of it's been, the hard way. Some of it was the easy way, but we want to make sure that if that's something you're thinking about doing, there's just things that you need to know before you go into that. So, and Clark, let me know if we can see everything good. Just hear a little bit about us. And our team was Savvy. So, we are at this point, Savvy's pretty much nationwide. I know we're in over 20 markets, I think more. Something that's a little bit different about Savvy with us is we only do short term rentals. So, I guarantee you, if whatever market you're in, if there is a Savvy agent in that market, they are going through the MLS every single day looking at deals. If there's a property you're interested in, they've probably seen it. They've probably ran a pro forma on it in some way. That is what we do every single day. We know our regulations, market trends, everything for our markets. And something that's a little bit different about us too is we're also investors. A lot of our agents are also STR owners or property managers. They have some sort of experience, whether it's personally or in the past, with STRs. So that's just something that makes us a little bit different. Um, like I said, they go through the MLS every single day, finding property, send them to our clients, pushing it out to our newsletters. We live, eat, breathe STRs here at Savvy. So,
Definitely,
but
definitely the go-to team.
but why new construction STRs? So these some of these are going to be kind of super general statements, and we're going to kind of dive into it a little bit. I think the number one reason for new construction is you can get custom designs that are different from already pre-built or older properties. It definitely depends on your area. Like here, we're in the Smokies. Your traditional log cabin is going to be something that there's a bunch of them. So one of your ways is something that's more modern. If you're somewhere, in a different market, it might look a little bit different. But I think the best thing about new construction is being able to stand out in your markets, whether that's to, just more modern designs, something that's unique. I'll use the term scroll stopping. That's going to be something like on Airbnb that I'll talk about a little bit later. That when you're trying to get bookings, is you want someone, when they're scrolling through on Airbnb, that first picture, I mean, it just stops them right there, and then they go into your listing. Another thing is lower maintenance and repair costs. I mean, that's traditional, with any new construction, but you're going to have just better materials, stuff that overall is just going to be a less cost up front, whether if you're buying something that's, older, if it's 10, 20, 30 years old, you might have to replace a roof. You might have to do these different things that you maybe don't factor into your pro formas that with new construction, for the most part, you're not going to have to really worry about on the upfront. And another thing too is, maximizing, the build for STRs. So what that kind of means is if you're looking at doing a new construction, you can gather all the information to see, hey, how can I, under a certain floor plan, use as much of this space as possible? Because if you're going to build, 2, 3 bedroom place, it doesn't need to be 5,000 square feet. If you want to be 2, 3, 4 bedroom, how can I get as much into a certain floor plan as possible that's still not too cramped, but you're just maximizing that space, not only in the house, but the surrounding land. Something a lot bigger nowadays is outdoor amenities, fire pits, string lights, saunas, pools. There's just so many things that if you look in really any market nowadays, you need to probably have some sort of, outdoor amenity. And that's maximizing that part too, that you can put into new construction when you're kind of going down this process.
I think a couple other points, strong points too, Lance, is equity. You're walking into a lot of instant equity when you're doing a build, versus finding something on the market that may be overpriced, um, as well as you're able to build it kind of the way you want it from the beginning, rather than having to go in, remodel, take walls down, add walls, etc.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And we'll actually, a little bit later, we will show one of our recent projects that Clarke was just saying, where somebody's able to walk into 6 figures worth of equity as soon as it was done closing. So that's a great point, Clarke. We'll show that a little later. Choosing the right market. Now, some of this is going to sound like kind of super vague. I really think for the most part, new construction can really be in probably the majority of markets. Obviously, you're going to have people there, strong tourism, whether it's in a mountain market like the Smokies or the Poconos, or even like somewhere at the beach. It does have to have strong, tourism there that people are going to, and you need to have fairly favorable, zoning or permitting for STRs that might eliminate some of your super big major cities. I know some, cities like even like New York City, or even I think it's happening a little bit in even like Nashville or other large metropolitan cities that are kind of starting to tighten down on that. There's still places to build in that. You're just going to have the right agent. That's part of Savvy what we do, knowing how to navigate that. But it's just something to keep in mind. If it's going to be really hard to try and build the short-term rental, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the best route to go. And another thing is, underserved areas. So, for instance, like where we are, a lot of cabins are very large cabins, but we also have very small cabins that are just for couples, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. However, a kind of underserved niche in that with a couple's cabin is like new construction, super modern cabins that are 1 to 2 bedroom. There's a lot of cabins where we are that are in the 2 to 3 or 4 that are just kind of traditional log cabins. I really wouldn't recommend probably doing a new construction, just kind of typical log cabin, just because there's so many to choose from, and you're going to compete with a bunch. So, within each market, there's going to be these kind of smaller niche designs, and that's something you can do on your own. You can also ask an agent. They should be able to tell you what that is, depending on the market. But that's kind of what you're looking for. You're trying to stand out in a way that's also not super, super competitive. Some market red flags, something that's overbuilt with slow absorption. If there's so much inventory and it's not selling off, I probably wouldn't recommend probably getting into that. It doesn't necessarily mean just new construction in general. If there's still a bunch of new construction, but it's more traditional, kind of like in the Smokies, there's new construction with like traditional log cabins. If you're trying to go that route, I probably wouldn't recommend it. But like I said, if you're going to go something more modern, there's just way less of those. And that's something I would say you probably want to explore more on that. Kind of piggybacking off what I said earlier, if it's super restrictive on, ordinances, zoning for STRs, it's probably not going to be the greatest thing to try and go into short-term rentals there. Not saying it's not impossible, but you're just going to have to do your homework from the front end on that. And then if it's somewhere super expensive, and when I say super expensive, if you're having to pay, 250,000, 500,000, or $1 million for just a lot or something like that, I don't know unless you're paying cash. I just don't know if that's going to be, and it all depends on what your goal is, but that's going to be probably a little bit tougher, especially if that building price per square foot is super high. It's going to be a little bit dependent on that market and how much you could bring in, but you're probably just going to have tighter margins versus somewhere where it has high tourism, it has a lot of people already there, and your building cost is going to be lower. You're probably just going to have better margins there. So the number one thing, and this is going to sound crazy to say, I know, is picking the right builder.
That's a big
That
one.
sounds like, yeah, that sounds like, oh, that's like number one thing. I could not stress this enough that you have to pick the right builder. Once you go into a new construction, I mean, the builder is, I mean, he is the entire thing. He creates the budget. He is the one at the end of the day building the property, what it's going to look like, the finishes. If he's going to be able to finish it, like I said, I'm going to talk about some of this stuff, and you're probably going to think, is this guy trying to talk me out of doing a new construction or into a new construction? Because Clarke and I were all for being transparent and honest. A lot of this we figured out the hard way. We have clients that have done really well with new construction. We have also had clients that we've tried to help out that ended up in lawsuits over new construction and still don't have anything to this day. And so we have seen the good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to new construction. So please, hear us and say, you got to do your homework. And number one, when you're trying to pick a builder, depending on your market, do they know what a short-term rental is? In our market, yes, because they're going to know for the most part. They're already, probably building short-term rentals. If you're somewhere that's more of an emerging market that short-term rentals is a little bit newer on the scene, it might be a little bit different. But they got to know what a short-term rental is. They got to be open to the idea. Um, is their communication good? I mean, can you call them and they pick up the phone? Are they transparent with the process, the pricing? Do they walk you through A to Z, or do they say, I just need you to trust me? That's probably going to be a red flag. We have heard that before. It's you're putting a lot of faith, spending a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy into a new construction. It's not for the faint of heart. There are delays, there are things that come up. Do you have a builder that can navigate through those, that can communicate appropriately of what's going on? If something does happen and that's outside of kind of the scope, can he get a game plan how to move forward? You'd be very surprised, in just that communication. That's like number one for us. So experience with the property type. So with short-term rentals, there are different building codes that are specific to an area that are outside normal international building code. So, for example, like in the Smokies, they have put in a new county permitting system that's a yearly inspection. That there are certain things on that are just for short-term rentals. So you have to have a fire extinguisher on every floor. You have to have an evacuation map on each floor, a printout. You have to have certain height deck railings if you have a hot tub that's close to a deck. If you have an indoor pool, you have to have self-closing or door latches, a pool alarm, things like that, that are going to be more STR specific. That if your builder doesn't know those things, what's going to happen is you're going to spend all this money to build this property, and then when that inspection comes around, you're going to be hit with all these different things, and you're sitting here thinking, why didn't my builder know this? And now you got to foot the bill for it. So make sure they have experience with building short-term rentals. They're up to date. These change on the year. So an example, this one you're looking at right here is a great example. This is one of our A-frames, kind of in the middle of construction here. And we went from 2024, there were certain building codes, so things like ingress and egress. This build transitioned over to 2025, and what happened is building code changed to that new year. So we got approved for certain things on that build in 2024 that now have changed in 2025, and this build is going to have to be up to date. So we had to put in new egress windows. There had to be a staircase built off the back deck, things like that that just change from year to year that your builder needs to be up to date with. And in their contract, what is their verbiage for unexpected costs or contingencies? There's certain things I'll go in a little bit later too that are kind of unknowns in our area. Wells can range anywhere from 400 feet deep to 1,000 feet. So you could spend $15,000 on a well. You could spend $50,000 on a well, and you just don't know until they start drilling. And once it's done, they're going to look at you and say, it costs X amount. Here it is. So there are certain things like that, foundation walls. Those are things your builder needs to know and have an accurate cost, because a foundation where we live can be anywhere from 25, 30,000 if it's just a short crawl space, to this one right here that you're looking at costs over $100,000 in just a foundation alone. So when your builder gives you a quote for $250 a square foot, he does not include those things. He is talking about the house from the trusses up. That does not include all the foundation that it takes to go under that. So you could spend 25,000, you could spend 100,000. He's going to be able to tell you that, or he should, on what that's the cost. But those are things you just have to keep in mind. Things that Boyd kind of hit already. If he's hard to communicate with, lack of clarity on expectations, you're going to have a builder's contract that's going to lay out these certain things. What happens if you have overages and that sort of thing? If they're inflexible and custom features and ideas, I talked about earlier, like more modern designs. I'll show you a little bit later. If they're wanting to just kind of build like a super cookie cutter build, it's going to be hard to recommend that. Just because, like in our area, there's just so many to compete from. I just really wouldn't recommend doing that. And then if they have a poor reputation, ask around. I know, like when we were trying to find a builder, Facebook groups, other owners, in your certain market, go in there and ask, hey, has anybody heard of such and such builder? Have they used them before? Could you ask the builder, hey, do you have any references? Can you call them? And can I talk to them on the phone? If they have bad reviews online, or if they have a lack of a portfolio. If you say, hey, can you send me some properties that you've done recently? And if they can't really send you anything, or it looks like more like maybe remodels to certain things, this is us talking from personal experience. If it's more remodels and not really new construction, those are going to be some red flags. If you can't say, hey, show me some past properties, and you can't drive or go look and see one, that's probably going to be a little bit of a red flag. So a little bit of a tangent there. I'm just telling you, you need to do your homework on that. And that's part of that
And
is having
Lance,
an agent that, yeah.
Lance, I would also add too that at the end of the day, if this is a decision that you as a buyer make, you at the end of the day, you need to be the one that takes responsibility for it. It's not something you can just pass off to your builder and then sit idly at home and wait for the CO to magically happen. It's your money involved, so you've got to take the steps daily, weekly at least, and keep yourself involved in the process through the build.
Yep. That's a great point. It's definitely a team effort between you, your builder, your agent, and just making sure everything's running smoothly. And at the end of the day, Clarke will tell you too, it's just communication and staying up to date. I mean, new construction is way easier and smoother just when everybody can communicate. Even if there's issues that come up, there's always something that comes up in new construction. There's delays, there's things that happen, things get broke, that sort of deal. As long as you guys can communicate, it's just going to be way easier on that, honestly.
Yeah, there's always going to be issues, but a lot of the times you'll find that they're easy to resolve when there's proper communication.
Yep. So a little bit about kind of designs, layouts, what's some things to look for if you're looking to do new construction. You know, I personally think if you're going to take the step to new construction, use that to your advantage. And by that, I mean design something or build something that's unique, that is going to stand out from competition. I mean, there's a lot of Airbnbs in every single market. There's a lot of competition. No matter where you're at, you have to stand out in some way. And if you are going to do new construction, you are actually at an advantage because you have kind of this blank canvas to decide how am I going to stand out. I can do custom finishes. I can, do these different things that's just going to help me stand out. This one right here, this is a perfect example. You've maybe seen this A-frame before. This is arguably one of the most famous A-frames, I'd say, on Airbnb. It's actually in the Hocking Hills market. But I mean, this is just a perfect example. A-frames on their own is very unique. People really like them. You can see the windows are triangle, floor to ceiling. This photo is great. They're using outdoor amenities. There's a fire pit. There's hammocks underneath. There's a deck with a hot tub. I mean, this is just a great example of something like when you're on Airbnb, and you're scrolling through looking at a property to stay at, and you see that right there. I mean, that just stops you right in your tracks on that. So this one's a great example. And I would say I have it as number two. It's not really in order, but Airbnb is about having an experience for your guests. Some of them, they're just a place to stay, but if you're looking to maximize your ROI, you're trying to make as much money as possible. You're trying to give an experience to the guests, and that's through unique design. That's through your amenities that you offer at the property. It needs to be unique. This one right here is a great example of that. And kind of based off this, Instagram worthy features. I mean, this is something I've seen online too, this one, but your hot tubs, your fire pits, mountain views, those different things that are going to be something that's almost, yeah, I don't want to say go viral, but something that, people talk about, people buzz about. That's a possibility that you can get through new construction. Materials and aesthetics, I mean, kind of looking at this one again, metal roof's going to be super durable. You're not really going to have to worry about, cleaning it much. It looks really good. And then, with some of these designs, if you're able to incorporate, game rooms, bunk rooms, movie theaters, different things like that, that's kind of going back on experiences and amenities. If you can find ways to put that in there, that's only a bonus. There's another A-frame. It's in Virginia. I'd have to find. It looks very similar to this, but underneath they did a basement. It has a full movie theater. It has a golf simulator. So not only is it an A-frame? Is it super modern? It has a golf simulator, hot tub, everything that they've put into that, and you really haven't had to change, a floor plan really of any. They just added a basement. Just things like that.
And Lance, the experience that you're providing these clients that come in is crucial because it can also jumpstart your first year in a very, very strong way. It also builds for more repeat clients, and it also creates referral clients from your repeat clients. And that's, if you're not sure what your experience needs to look like, that's definitely one of the things that you can speak to your savvy agent about because the experience is there and they'll be able to provide that for you.
Yeah. And speaking of, you're probably asking, okay, what what kind of properties, like here, I'll pull it up. Clark, can you see my screen right
Yeah.
here that I'm sharing? Okay. So here is this A-frame right here, the Dunlap Hollow that I was just showing. So right here, I think I searched, most popular A-frame cabins on Airbnb. Here is a list of different ones. And this one I had shown, I've actually seen a few times over the years. This one was built a couple years ago. But if you're wondering, Lance, that all sounds great. I like modern. I like that. I don't live in whatever market I live. You know, what can I find that works in my state? Here's a great tool right here. So just go on. This is actually Airbnb's website, and I just searched in, most popular Airbnbs by state. This is a great tool to see, okay, what works in my market. If we go to Tennessee right here, this is the most wish listed Airbnb. This is an old fort. This isn't even this property right here is not even in the Smokies. I believe this is closer to Middle Tennessee. But like, here's a great example. So, and this is just a one bedroom, one bath. Great photos. I'll click on these here. So the inside, great views. The photos are fantastic. Modern finishes. Got a window in the shower, which is great. Here's a view off the back deck. I think this one too, when I looked earlier, it has a hot tub. Let me keep going here. I think it's got there's a cold plunge. It has an outdoor shower. I mean, that's just a great example of something that's not even in like our Smokies market. That's going to be in a smaller market, but it's going towards a small niche of like, you know, a couples retreat or something that's working really well. If you were to go to, I mean, let's put even like Florida here. I mean, here's something crazy like with a helicopter. That's pretty cool. I mean, you can just click around here, luxury domes, geodomes, that sort of deal. Like you can just click in any one of these and it's going to see, and you can kind of see a trend. I mean, a lot of these are more modern. Let's go even here into Indiana. So here's something, super modern. This is probably for, a couple or maybe even small family. But I mean, here's another great example of just something that this is the most wish listed on Airbnb. So just kind of example, if you're curious, what is working in my market, just, I mean, as basic as that sounds, just search, you know, online what's the best Airbnbs in Tennessee or like that sort of thing, and then you'll start to see and get a kind of idea and trend, and then from there you can use things like AirDNA, Rabu, different websites like that to then kind of hone in and see what kind of performance are they doing, what kind of numbers are these properties doing, and that's something also a savvy agent can help you out with. But so when it comes to actually going through a build, managing budgets and timelines. So when you sign the contract, even before that, if you're wanting to build a new construction property, you're going to have some upfront costs. Number one, you're going to have to buy land to build on it. That could be as cheap as $10,000 to $250,000. It depends on the market. It depends on the area. That's just something you're going to have to build or to buy to build on. Build plans is something else. If you're trying to, find something you can get with an architect, you can go online. I mean, here's an example. This is our build plan for our A-frame. This is a 3D rendering on the bottom. You can see the windows here and how that matches the picture up top. That's something you get with an architect. Fully designed, let them do. You're also going to have surveys. Depends on where you're at. Usually anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000, give or take, depending on your area. Permits, that's going to be not only building permits, but depending on where you live, that could be like a septic permit. Here in the Smokies, most of these cabins are not on utility water or sewer, so you're going to need a well and a septic. You have to have those permits in line before you build, and I would encourage you to do all that homework on the front end. If you can find land that already has a survey and septic, that's ideal. That's just less risk you're taking. If not, if you're going to buy a piece of land, please make it contingent on a survey and a septic. That way you don't get stuck with a piece of land that you can't build on. That's kind of worst case scenario. It happens, but please try to do your due diligence as much as possible.
And
Um, once you kind of
if you're local to the area that you're building in, the stuff that Lance just spoke about, I would try to make it a point to do as much of that individually as you can and not necessarily rely on your builder to do all of that. Obviously, he'll do the permits and stuff from the town, but that way it's done, cleared out, and it's one less thing that the builder has to worry about.
Yep, that's a good point. And an example that happened in our market is, Clark will know this, is someone they did like new construction. They built, say, hey, we sold this listing. We're going to build a 4-bedroom cabin on this land. And when they got to build on it, they never did a septic permit. They did the permit after the fact, and then they got the permit back, and it was only perked for I believe it was a 3-bedroom or a two, so it was less than what was sold. So now somebody has, bought this plan to get this 4-bedroom built on their property. And, they spent probably seven, 800, $900,000. And turns out that their land's only perked for two or three. So, that's going to hurt them down the road when they go to sell it, because they can only advertise the permit number on the listing. So, even if they build a 4-bedroom place on it, they could still only sell it as a 2-bedroom. And that's just from not doing your due diligence on the front end. And that's why we just don't recommend, flying by the seat of your pants and just say, hey, I'll buy this land sight unseen. Would not recommend that unless you just like to lose money. Built-in contingency. So when you get a loan for a build, we're going to just talk round numbers here. Let's say your build cost is $600,000. It depends on the kind of loan you're going to get, but most lenders are going to allow a contingency amount of usually 10 to 15% of the total build. So if you're having a build cost of $500,000, you're going to have an additional $50,000 at least you need to put in there just for contingencies. That can be for, just anything that happens, like what I was talking about earlier. You budgeted $20,000 for your well, and they had to go 300 feet deeper than they thought, and now it's $35,000. Well, if you don't have that contingency in there, your builder is going to come look to you and say, hey, Mr. Owner, that costs $15,000 more. I need a check from you for $15,000. The goal in new construction is not to pay out of pocket at all when it's going through it. You want everything included within the loan amounts. So you need to do 10% minimum if the lender is okay with it. I would even suggest 15% or even more, just to see why. Because, just things happen. You can also use that amount when you get later down the road for your textures and your finishes. So a lot of the things that come up when you first start that may eat into that contingency is going to be, your well. Another thing is going to be your foundation, like I talked about earlier. You could have where you end up needing engineering for a foundation, and it ends up costing, in one client's case, we had it cost $80,000 more dollars right then and there because the builder made a mistake. So luckily they had the funds to do that, but they blew through their contingency within the first month of build, which goes back onto picking the right builder. So all that to say, having a contingency in there will help you out on the front end, but then on the back end is if your builder does everything right and all that stuff goes through, you're going to have leftover money to now, if you wanted to upgrade your countertops or your cabinets, or there's going to be change orders involved, but you now have that leftover money. That money's already in there. You're going to use it. If you don't use it, it usually just goes back to your principal on your loan. But if the loan's already taken out on that, use that to your advantage. So contingencies in there to keep you from paying out of pocket. But when you get closer to the end, you're going to have that money left over to do some updates. So Project management tools, usually your lender will have some sort of software or portal. Usually, there are builder portals that some builders do have that they give to their customers. You can also have things like job site cameras, you know, trail trail hunting cameras that are solar powered, different things like that, just to keep on time. Usually, builder portals, and this will kind of hit on the bottom note here, is usually a builder portal that is through the lender. You're able to keep track and see the draws come out and see how much is it each one. And what happens is the builder he'll get his first check and it's however much, and he'll build to a certain amount. The bank will send an inspector, confirm that the things that first draw went through were done, sign off, and then you as a buyer usually will see that and sign off of it as well. Then you can move to the next step, and so on and so forth. So you should be able to see on each draw, and it's usually between 4 to 6 draws, the progress that's happening through that. Just so you know you can keep track of your budget, make sure everything's going smoothly. Usually recommend a weekly check-in with your builder. It depends on the builder. It depends on how hands-on they are. But usually about once a week, that's what we did. We would go to each job site. Usually on Fridays, we would take pictures and get a little bit of an update for our client just so they're up to date. Even if it's, you know, hey, nothing's happening this week, we're still waiting on windows and doors, or, you know, hey, we ran into this, but we're fixing it. Just things like that.
Or
So,
weather
you know,
related.
or weather related. That's a great point too. So, and then, so here's a recent project. So I just showed on the last slide. This is this same cabin done. So the total turnkey out the door that include the contingency and everything that they used up was about 600,000. That property appraised for 725. So our client instantly walked into 6 figures of equity on that. So why we chose this plan is, one, with an A-frame, and you know, just like I kind of talked about earlier, how do we find that? We go online, we see which ones are which plans that people are liking on Airbnb. That's how we landed on something like this. And then something I would add to, like I said, this is a great listing on here. We have a custom spiral staircase. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Clark, was what, $10,000 just for the staircase?
Yeah, 10 to 12.
Yep. And then there's a floating, like in the middle, there's a floating, like 70s style, true wood burning fire pit that's really cool. So those were some things that they ended up, the owner could, you know, do after the fact because they had some money left over on that. That also goes to, there's a hot tub dining area. Some things I would even recommend, like if you've seen something like this, is making sure you do have amenities that hit different seasonal trends. So like we're here in the Smokies, for the most part, it's pretty year round. Couple, you know, off months in January, February. But make sure you have, you know, like a hot tub. I would even recommend these days probably a sauna for those colder months. Just something that kind of keeps that traffic going year round on that. And then other ways you can invest in new construction. So I know that was a lot. You might say, okay, that sounds like a little too much that I'm more to bite off. That sounds like a little bit more than I want to, you know, maybe look at. There are different ways you can invest in new construction. So what I'm talking about, you know, is buying pizza land, getting plans done, researching what you want to do, building it, and then keeping it. There's also different ways you can do that. So you can do what's called a spec build, which is where you buy some land, you find a plan that you want to build, and either using traditional construction loan or someone like a hard money lender, you could just build that and then you could sell it. Usually, and you're using that difference in the build cost and what it sells for, and you're essentially just flipping that, and you never have to have renters or anything. There's plenty of people, especially in our market, that do that. There's even agents that do that. Hard money lenders, we had one client that once you develop a relationship with a hard money lender, he had as much as what was it, Clark? Was it 5 million or 10 million in hard money loans out for new construction?
Five, 5.5.
Yeah, about 5.5 million in new construction builds that he had developed a relationship with, and he is just doing build and then sell. So, and then if you can partner and get a good relationship with a builder on that, that's even better. Um, New construction, as in buying new construction. So, that could be a builder has got a property advertised that's under construction, and then once it's done, they go to sell it. If you're looking at buying one of those, they usually offer some sort of incentive. It's either going to be rate buy downs, closing costs, furniture credits. I'll actually give an example right here. We just had a client do this. So this is a new construction A-frame here in the Smokies. They closed on it, I think, 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, and it's only been up for about a month. They bought a blank canvas, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, and they were able to get their closing costs paid for. They were able to get a credit after closing for furniture and outdoor amenities. And they essentially took this blank canvas and I mean, within, I think it's been up about a month or so, they've already had 11 5-star reviews. And this place is really nice. I mean, there's a hot tub, they added a fire pit, they made it super dark. Here's kind of the outdoor area, and just kind of giving an experience, super dark colors on the inside. They did a really good job with this, and they were able to get most of those closing costs. I think it was 4%, I want to say, and then 2% on the other things. So I think they got almost 6% in seller credits to do that. And so usually, if you are buying new construction, it probably is going to be a little more expensive, but because there's usually a little room in there, you're going to have more of those incentives to get closing costs paid for, furniture credits. I mean, that could be $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. It's going to depend on the deal, but those are things that, because there's room in there, that you can do. So, and then the probably least risk involved, and this is something even like Clark and I have done before, and it's just buying the land only. You can buy the land, you can have an investor or a builder build on it, they sell it, and then they will just pay you whatever amount you agree on once it sells. And all you ever have to do is own the land. Usually probably takes about a year or so for them to go through that full process, but like in our area, you can still find land that's 20, 30, 40, $50,000 on the lower end. Builder investor will build on it, and they'll pay you 80, 100, $120,000, and you can double, triple your money, and all you did was buy the land. So that's just kind of a little bit. I know that's kind of a lot thrown at you, but new construction is a very broad umbrella that you can. There's so many different ways that you can invest in it. So, Clark, you got any kind of closing thoughts? I know it's 1:45, so kind of open it up to any questions or anything. But
Well,
you got any other closing thoughts?
I know we've got one question that asks, can leftover money be used for furnishing?
Yes. So it'll depend on the loan that you're using. It depends if it's hard money or if it's normal, like a normal construction loan. It'll have to be something that the builder buys. They can't just write a check straight to you. So for instance, like in this case, let me go back here. So on this project here, there was money allotted that was left over that went to a designer. So the builder, it has to go to either a designer or a company. It can't just go straight to you, the buyer, individually. But this one, in this case, went to a designer, and they were able to fully furnish and design this cabin. through that. So, long story short, yes, it can go to that. It just has to go to a designer or a company on that.
I think to sum it up, Lance, the key things that looking back on the ones we have done is, and you can't harp on it enough, is proper communication, building and having a relationship with your builder, and also keeping your savvy agent involved.
Hmm.
Like especially for out of town people that are building in a market that is far away from where they live. That agent's invested. They need to be able to go there weekly like we have done and other savvy agents do. And also at times be able to communicate with the builder if it requires that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Like at the end of the day,
at the end of
communication.
the day, it's your responsibility. So you need to, your money is invested. So I can't stress enough how important it is that you're actively involved.
Yep. And then, I mean, kind of like we've had before too, is if you don't keep up to date, I mean, it's the builder's everything. It can just come to a screeching halt just like that, and you're left tied up without, a loan for however much out with no end in sight. So do your research on the front end, and you could still do your research and things happen. Not to talk anybody out of new construction, but it's just things you need to know on the front end. For
The
it's
reward,
not all it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
no, it's not. But I will tell you this, the reward that can come from it financially is makes building worth it from the standpoint of equity, financially, from the standpoint of um, making it your own, being able to create the experience that's important. I mean, like you said earlier, the experience is one of the most crucial things, and not just new construction, but really any STR that's out
Yeah,
there. I mean,
yeah,
you look at some of the experiences that Tyler Kuhn has done in North Carolina, and it's just mind blowing. The
yeah.
outdoor amenities. I mean, amenities are everything. Um, Another question, how do we learn of these opportunities? Is Savvy going to identify and circulate some of the new construction opportunities for its clients? We typically see new construction, but when it's ready, not before build or during the building process.
That's a great question. So usually I'm going to kind of go back to like your savvy agents. So like us on our team, most of these new construction, it's either number one, it's going to be listed. We in our MLS can have under construction listings. I know it depends on the MLS that you're in. But some of that is going to be honestly a word of mouth of if your agent is good with builders, and that's developing relationships with builders in their market that says, hey, this is coming up soon. I know about this one. So a lot of it, if it's not in the MLS already, it is going to be probably on your agent that has developed those relationships or is even good with other, agents in their market that they know does new construction. I mean, Clarke, how many agents do we know that their spouse or however they're involved in new construction as well? So they have these things coming up that they'll go ahead and let us know about even before they go to market or something they just posted. I mean, I could think of probably what half a dozen at
Yeah.
least.
Yep.
So a lot of that's going to be on your agent and them knowing those and building those personal relationships. But that's a fantastic question.
And also, feel free to I mean, sometimes you just need to let your agent know that that's an interest that you have. Maybe that wasn't discovered during the discovery process when you guys met and sat and had a conversation about it. And if it's something that you're interested in doing, sometimes it's just as easy to let them know. And you might be, like Lance said, you might be surprised. by the relationships they already have. How do I get on the list to let you all know I want new construction opportunities? Um, well, that's easy. Just let us know. Um, we have our information at the end of the slideshow, so
Yeah, let me put that back up real quick.
you can easily contact myself or contact Lance, and then we can have a quick conversation about it. If it's in this area. If it's outside of this area, like Lance said, I mean, we're savvy agents are in 20 different markets, and I can easily say that I trust each and every one of them. And they're just as knowledgeable as well.
So there's our info. I think the QR code takes to book a call, but here's our cell phone numbers. You can call Texas anytime, 24/7. We may not answer if it's after a certain amount, but you can definitely call. I like to tell people, but that is our info right there. If you'd like to
And
know
if
more
you,
about just kind of the process.
yeah, and feel free too, if you're shooting a text to one, you can do a group text to both of us. One of us will get back to you promptly. Well done, Lance. I think that's about it, right?
I think so, unless anybody else has got any more questions.
If you do, guys, feel free. And the only dumb question is the one not asked, especially when you're doing new construction. So at any point in time, just feel free to reach out to either one of us, even if it's a question that you feel might be simple. A lot of the times it's not. So it's good to ask what comes across your mind. I'm thankful for all of you guys joining us today. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to do this. Lance, great job.
You as well. Thanks again to everybody for listening. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we can talk about this maybe sometime soon again. But once again, thanks for listening, and everybody else have a great rest of their day.
Thank you.